morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining the session today. It is a small group, but mighty. I think they are still getting started back there, so until we get that started, I'm gonna hold my introduction. I feel like I've met you somewhere before. What's your name? Oh, your face looks so familiar.
I get that a lot, actually.
Good morning, good morning, good morning again, and welcome to the Business Acumen session of PMI. And my name is Cathy and Ivey. I do give my full government name. And I have my own firm now, since I have retired in 2023 after working 40 years in financial services, in the last 10 years working in human resources. So I really don't want to talk a lot about me, but I want to talk a lot about what is happening in our current environment in shifting your inclusion perspective, past, present, and possibilities. Anybody know what happened in the beginning of the year of 2025 regarding DE&I, or diversity, equity, and inclusion? Anybody know what happened? It was assassinated. Any other thoughts on that? It was assassinated.
Removed from government jobs and affiliated places that didn't want to do it anyway. I mean, banks and other places still have, they didn't get wiped out.
Yeah.
But that's right.
Basically, DE&I is a bad word now. You cannot use that language any longer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how do you shift in your thinking and your projects and supporting the workplace and your colleagues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about the timeline of DE&I. We're going to do a quick group activity. We're going to find out what's next. We're going to talk about some actions that you can take, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions. So let's talk about this DE&I and A. Does anybody know what the A stands for? Accessibility. Thank you. That's right. Diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. It really started in the 60s. With the civil rights movement. And I start there. It doesn't mean it wasn't happening before that, but if you look at it as a block of time and decades, a 10-year period, it really started with the Civil Rights Act, the protests, and all of the acts that came after that, building on accessibility, inclusion, and more importantly, equity. I really don't even try to point you in the direction of diversity. It's really about equity. Has anybody seen this, it's gone around on social media, LinkedIn, it's been everywhere. This picture of 3 people standing in front of a fence and they're standing on boxes. Has anyone ever seen that? I wish I had it, I couldn't find it, but I've seen this. And basically, when you're talking about equity, you're talking about and the individuals are standing on different size boxes, trying to look over the fence. And one box is taller, one box is medium, one box is shorter. Getting everyone at equity to look over the fence to see the game. So when I'm talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I really focus on equity more than inclusion and diversity. And then we talk about accessibility. That was probably added, and we'll talk through that a little bit. So it started in the 60s with the civil rights legislation. Between 1960 and 1990, there wasn't much legislation that was put in place to create diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think organizations were looking to stand on integrity and do the right thing without legislation pushing you and pushing organizations to ensure that there was equity in their organization. But in 1990 through 2000s, there was this growing awareness of it. Why do you think it started growing in the 90s and the 2000s? What do you think was happening in our culture that pushed that drive for it to grow? Anybody? It was cultural awareness. It was millennials and Gen Xers saying, I want more opportunity. And what are you doing about it to attract me as a talent in your organization or at your school? How do you make sure that when I come to your organization, I feel welcomed, I can be my authentic self? So the rhetoric, right? People just started saying, I want more. That's what happens. So that's why it started growing. And then in 2000 to 2015, we saw emerging frameworks in organizations, in your companies. I started my journey in corporate America in 1985 on Wall Street for this large Swiss bank, Credit Suisse. There were not many women, and there were not many black women or minority women in that organization. And when I tell you, when I walked in that door, I was like, oh, wow, this is totally different for me. But what I also saw there was we started growing in the emergence of business resource groups, employee resource groups. Do you all have that in your organizations today? Let me just say this. Let me rephrase that. Do you still have them in your organizations today? Yes. Most organizations still have them. Business resource groups, employee resource groups became the cornerstone for DE&I. Before we could define what diversity, equity, and inclusion was, it really started with the BRG groups. And then between this time frame with these emerging frameworks, we also saw organizational formulations of DE&I. That's when you saw chief diversity officers being hired at organizations. You know, BRG groups started growing. They may have started with 10, then they became, hundreds. I know at the banks here in Charlotte, where my old organization that I used to work with, I led our women's employee resource group. We had over 1,800 members of a 30,000 people organization. That's a lot. And when I left, we started that in 2007, and when I left in 2023, we had over 10,000 members in one organization. Because the organization realized my experience is different from a man's experience in the workplace. Would you all say that? Anybody have some examples of why that's different? Don't all speak. It's only 3 of us, 4 of us, 5 of us. Don't all speak at once. Why do you think? Yes, Brianna. Okay, so if you didn't hear that, Brianna, I happen to know Brianna, she shared that she received some feedback that because she's so soft-spoken, she wouldn't be taken seriously in that soft-spoken voice and versus maybe her male counterparts. Any other examples? Yes. She's going to bring the mic.
Women are usually the primary caregivers for their families, so it's a different experience than a man in the workplace when you have to take care of your children.
Yes, and share your name again.
Tanitra.
Tanitra, thank you, Tanitra. So I know that I experienced, maybe not intentionally, but it has happened where I'm not going to give Cathy that role because she has to take care of her kids. I know she's a parent at home, and at the time I was a single parent, so she can't travel. She doesn't have the time. Those are perceptions, right? Even though I'm sure their intention was, I'm going to let you do that, but that could hold us back. And that's where all these organizational formalizations in DE&I occurred. We began, I'm going to go back to the civil rights movement. It started affirmative action planning, right? Organizations then had to start sharing with the federal government how many people in demographics. What are some demographics? Do y'all know? What's your name? Casey? Denise. I'm sorry, Denise. What are some demographics that you are aware of? That's right. Age is a demographic. Age, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, all of those are demographics that as a federal contractor with the government, you were required to send in from the Civil Rights Act and through all this formalization. So each year, organizations had to say how many people under these different demographics, veterans is another one, and individuals with disabilities. How many people work in your organization that fall? And if your numbers weren't where they potentially should be, and those numbers were reflected based on the market, what is happening in the market and where you live or where your organization exists, right? You may have way more minorities in the Northeast than you might have in the Midwest. So the federal government was saying, hey, we want to help ensure that everyone has a chance to be seen, get this job, mobility, meaning being promoted, all those things, right? That's all of that formalization and organizational formalization that happened. So let's come through 2020 and through 2024. I specifically called that out because what happened in 2020? I'm gonna hold that one. What happened in 2020? COVID. Thank you, Calvin. And then what happened, Brianna? George Floyd. We saw what happened to this gentleman on national TV because all we were doing was sitting at home and watching TV because we couldn't go anywhere from COVID. And that then accelerated companies, and I'm going to say this, companies began offering vanity opportunities around DE&I. They started hiring more chief diversity officers. They started having different business resource groups, employee resource groups. They started saying, what should we be doing differently? We're going to give a bunch load of money to these different organizations to overcome what was happening and what we saw with George Floyd and others. He was the catalyst, but there were others. So that's where you saw that acceleration and expansion. And then let's talk about this current year, 2025. Rollbacks from executive orders. Does anybody know what those executive orders are? I'm going to talk about them if you don't know. I'm going to bring them up. But in 2025, our current administration signed several executive orders. I'm going to share two of them with you that changed the game. And I don't advocate one way or the other. I am neutral. I'm just sharing information. And the reason why I also say that is because you have to be so careful right now. That's why I started off by saying DE&I right now is a bad word. It is a bad word. And we shouldn't be saying it, we shouldn't be using it, but it is, you have to explain, right? You have to talk about it. So here is that timeline. So my next thing I want to do is ask this group, and I would like to hear from you if you feel comfortable. If you don't, it's okay. Tell me what are you encountering in your projects regarding inclusion strategies? What's happening right now in your organizations on your projects? Are you talking about it? Are you not talking about it? Is it on hold? Are you still thinking about it? So who'd like to go first? Yes,
In our
Calvin.
team meetings, we don't talk about it. We just pretend it's not happening.
Okay, so Calvin says in his team meetings, they don't talk about it. They're acting like nothing is happening. All right, that's fair. Thank you. Who else?
We don't talk about it. And the ERG groups are now asked to only, previously they could send out invitations to activities company-wide. Now they're asked to only send out things to the people who are signed up for that particular group. So if you're not in that group or signed up for that group, you don't see the activities. So it doesn't get to the whole company.
Okay, thank you, Brianna. So Brianna was sharing that similar to Calvin's experience, not talking about it, pretty much ignoring it. And with their current business resource groups, it's not all are welcome. They have narrowed it to only the scope of the individual demographic. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Okay. So part of what I'm doing right now, after I retired, I did take a whole year off. I did nothing. My daughters was like, girl, if you don't get up and do something, but I really wasn't looking to work. But someone reached out to me and said, Cathy, with your background and experience and the changes with the executive order, we need help. What do we do now? What's next? What do we do now that we can't say DE&I? We can't collect data. You can't use it in a recruiting tool. You potentially may not be able to have business resource groups. What do I do, Cathy? And I sat there and I'm like, okay, I love a good challenge. Started Cathy and Ivey Consulting LLC, and now I work with a Fortune 100 energy company, helping them figure out, what do I do now? So what's next? So here are the two executive orders that happened, I think it was January or February. The first one is Executive Order 14151. Please write these down and go out there and read them yourselves. I am not going to interpret them for you, but you should go out there and read them because first of all, the language in it is going to blow your mind. I'm going to just say that out loud. But the first order ended diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility programs across federal departments. That meant anyone in the federal government, if you work there, DE&I is no longer an option. Again, no recruiting, no programs. That includes women-owned businesses. Right? It's not just about ethnicity. It really stopped everything. But please go out there and read it on your own. The second one was Executive Order 14173, which prohibited diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility programs for federal contractors. Now, what does that mean? That means Wells Fargo. What's the other? Truist. Duke Energy. They're all large organizations who are federal contractors with the government. Most large organizations, mid-sized corporations, they're federal contractors. If you are a federal contractor with the government, you can no longer have programs for DE&I. So that means no recruiting, no internal programs, no language, change your website. How many of your companies you saw that their website language changed? Yes. If you haven't looked, go out there and look, because there is a before and after. You had to literally take all of that away because they are federal contractors of the government. And I'm going to talk about like what's next, what's the action. But these executive orders shifted how we think about it. But when I was hired to help this energy company figure out, well, what do I do now? Right? I said, okay, let's talk about it. Let's discuss what are ways that we maintain the rule of law, because you still have to follow the rule of law. And secondly, continue to do what's right. DE&I doesn't have to be defined for you. It is, you do what's right. Is it right to not talk about it in the team meeting, Calvin?
No, it's not right.
It's not right, because when I'm standing up here in front of you, what do you see? What do you see me as? I know I'm beautiful and intelligent and all that. I know that. Don't say that. Don't say that part. That's a given. That is a given. What else do you see?
I see strength.
Thank you. You see strength.
See a black woman.
You see a black woman. I see a business owner. I'm all those things. But I'm glad that you said I am a black woman. I'm black and a woman. I'm not trying to hide who I am. And do I have a different experience potentially than Bronwyn in her work life? Even Lorelei is shaking her head. Yes, I do. We all have different experiences, don't we? So why would you not want to protect that my experience exists? Not that it's, again, I'm not advocating whether it's good or bad, whether it's right or wrong, but that the experience exists. I'm Calvin. Have you had a different experience than I have had potentially in the workplace?
So, question, with all the differences that we're talking about, between the African Americans, the whites, the Latinos, or whatever the case may be, because we have that, why is it being so hard for everyone to see that there is diversity? Not that the diversity should be an issue, but why can't it be where we recognize there's diversity and acknowledge it and maybe, put some things in place? It doesn't have to be that, it's a black thing or a Latino thing or a white thing, but we're all different, because one of the things when you think about it, the women, whether you black or white, have issues in the workforce as well. So why can't we just let it be?
Thank you for that question, and that's what we're going to talk about, like what's next, like what do you do? How do you answer that? Because I love that she said strength. That's why I always say I'm beautiful. I know I'm fly and all that other stuff, right? I know that. But I'm strong, I'm a newly business owner, but I'm also a black woman. And I don't want that to be overshadowed because I'm proud of that, right? We're all proud of who we are, where we come from, our backgrounds, our cultures. But right now, the government is saying you can't acknowledge that in a program. That's what the government is saying. But what you can still do is acknowledge that who I am. One of the things, has anyone ever heard in a meeting, or you met with someone, or you interviewed someone, or you've been out somewhere, and someone says to me, I don't see color? Right? Have you heard that? Or, I don't see you as a woman, Cathy. You're just smart. I mean, I appreciate those things. But then you're not seeing my full, authentic self. Right? So, what is the right thing to do? What do you do now that you have to be so careful with these executive orders? The first one, you have got to support the rule of law. You've got to do it. You have no choice. Your company is following the rule of law. Remember I said if you're a federal contractor under that second one, you got to follow the rules. The government now says you don't even have to do affirmative action plans anymore. The idea is organically it will happen. And I will say, since then, I think people are mindful of it, and they are being more organic and ensuring, but there is no accountability behind it any longer in terms of the federal government holding companies accountable. The second thing is read, comprehend, and know what is fact. That's why I gave you the numbers and the description so that you can go out and read them on your own. They're really not long. You get the gist of it in the very first, Article 1, Paragraph 2, Section C. If you go out there and look at them and read them, because you have to know the facts. Not what my interpretation of it is, not what you hear on the news, not what you hear from a friend. Read them on your own and know what is fact. Because until then, you're just guesstimating. Now, you can interpret it for yourself after you read it, but that's still you knowing the facts. The third one is engage leaders and teams on the path forward. So, Calvin, I would say within your organization and your team meetings, it is okay to say, what are we going to do? What are we doing about this? Is it silence, or is it okay for us to talk about what are the steps that the organization is taking? Silence is not the answer, because what happens when you don't have a response? What happens when someone doesn't communicate to you? What do? What do we do? Right? And you should never assume. I'm old enough to know the Odd Couple show, and they wrote out what assume means when you underscore and break it up, right? You should never assume. But we make up our own stories. If that's how gossip starts, right? Because you hear something, but nobody tells you the facts. No one gives you information. So then you start creating the scenarios and the stories. May or may not be true. So silence is not the answer. It is, so what are we doing? So then you know the boundaries, you know the lines not to cross. Make sense? Follow the company policies to ensure compliance. If you're working on a project, if inclusion comes up, there's some new language, belonging, right? That is another opportunity to talk about inclusion. If it comes up, make sure that you include your legal team on any project where there is discussion around diversity, equity, or inclusion, or belonging, because you do not want to get in trouble. So the organization that I'm working for, they have BRGs. This comes out. Every BRG leader is like, Cathy, what do we do? Are we disbanding? Can we meet anymore? Like, what do we do? There is guidelines that were sent out from the Department of Justice, Bondi, I can't remember her first name, the Attorney General, to give guidance to keep companies out of trouble. Again, you can go out there and read them, but BRGs can exist. They just have to be open and welcome to all. All are welcomed. So to your point, Brianna, about just sending it to one group, they really should be saying everyone is welcome to participate, which they always were. Let me tell you another word that we're not using anymore. Ally. Allyship. That's another word we're not using any longer. I'm telling you all this to keep us all out of trouble. So follow the company policies. But you have to ask the question of what are the company policies, and that's why silence won't work. Next is continue to engage in conversations that welcome all and that are inclusive. So when you're on your projects, you're in your projects teams, don't be silent. Because what I used to always hear when we talked about diversity of a team, it's not just diversity in ethnicity, race, gender. It was diversity of thought, right? Because we're all looking through a different lens, and we bring that to a meeting, a project, an outcome. Make sense to everybody? And lastly, remain curious. Like you just stay open, remain curious. One of my favorite questions is, Lorelei can probably is an example of that. I say, tell me more. Right? It's so simple. Tell me more. That's an interesting thought. Tell me more. That's okay. I may not agree with that, but tell me more. That is equaling to curiosity. And curiosity will keep you out of trouble. It will help you grow your emotional intelligence. Staying curious will also answer a lot of questions. And as a project manager, you know that, right? Don't you ask a lot of questions? I used to hold my PMP many years ago. I let it drop because, like Lee Lambert said, he didn't want to work. That's why he chose to do project management. I realized that was too much work for me. But I did enjoy the tools that come with project management. And one of the things that I remember was stay curious and always ask a lot of questions. Why do we do it? What's Fishbone, right? Is it Fishbone? Did I get that right? The 5 whys? Why do we do that? Why? It's staying curious. All right, so I'm going to stop there, see if anybody has anything else they would add to that list of now what.
I love the fact that you're talking about now what, right? The next steps, the actions we can take. And I would also add to that is to get creative. And so I have a question about what you've seen in the creativity space here. So when we're talking about language and language changes, what are you seeing that helps us to continue to do the work we know needs to be done in this space in a little bit different of a language, getting a little creative with the words we're using to maybe not set off red flags, if you will, but to really continue the important and critical work in this space.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And that's basically what I'm doing with my consulting firm, is figuring out and helping organizations figure out what's next. How do I continue to do this? The newest nomenclature, I'm going to use that word, is belonging. A little shift from DE&I to belonging. That language seems to be softer, seems to be more receptive and received well. So belonging is some of the language. The second thing is, what are the pillars of the organization? What are their pillars? What are their virtues? What is their mission and vision? Because if your pillars are welcoming, authentic, integrity, you know what they are at organizations and their missions, they use those kinds of words, then they have to stand on that. And if you're standing on your integrity and your mission and your vision and welcoming and authentic, then the executive orders don't matter. Does that make sense? If you're saying I want to be welcoming and authentic, then how do you create the culture? No matter what administration says, no matter what the law says, I'm still going to create this environment because I'm standing on my virtues, my mission, my vision. So if one of them is, I'm just using authentic as an example. If one of your virtues and your mission is authentic, then I should still be able to show up with my short hair, with my locks, with my blue hair, with my Doc Martens or, whatever it is, right? I should still be able to wear my rainbow lanyard. I should still be talking about my partner, if it's equal gender or not, right? So those are ways that that companies are trying to figure out how to be creative. But my recommendation to all the companies that I'm working with or I offer to you is stand on the integrity of your mission. And that will force you to always do what's right. So if what's right is, because you can't do it anymore, you can no longer have diversity slates. Does everyone know what I mean by diversity slate? When you're hiring under the old administration, you would ensure that you had a woman, a person of color, gender, as much as you can, or a veteran, or someone who self-identifies as have an individual with disabilities or a veteran. So you would have a slate, and you ensure that those types of candidates were part of the candidate pool for interviews. Can't do that any longer under those 2 executive orders. But is it still the right thing to do? Is it still the right thing to do? Even though the government says you must not do it, you don't have to do it any longer, but is it the right thing to do? What do you all say? Is it the right thing to do to have a diverse candidate slate?
It 100% is for everyone involved, including the company. You want the best possible candidate, so you want the best possible candidate pool, which is a diverse candidate pool. You're actually limiting yourself if you don't have that.
I agree with that comment, and it is, but it's the right thing to do. Now, again, I'm not advocating for the government one way or the other in the administration, but that's what the laws used to force us to do. Now, without the law, right, with the executive order, is saying you should be doing this organically. You should be doing it because it's the right thing to do. So that's where your mission and your vision and those values, those virtues, those pillars that companies stand on when they put their mission on the website. So now you got to stand on that, right? You got to say it with your full chest. So those are, I wouldn't even say creative, but it is a logical path to lead us to continue to do what's right. And that's what the government is really just saying. That's why they implemented executive orders. Do what's right. You shouldn't have to do it based on the law. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm going to keep saying that because I'm on this camera. All right. Any other thoughts, questions? So I'm just opening it up now. What are your questions?
Do you think that DEI as a general should be ingrained in the organization and not a standalone department? Like a lot of companies, as you said, hired a chief of diversity or something like that. Do you think that those programs should be in the company as a whole or in general and just not as a standalone program?
So the question is, the former DE&I department's chief diversity office, should that be a standalone group, person, organization, or should it be embedded? And my answer as a 40-year practitioner, this is my opinion, is that it should be embedded in the culture. It should be part of the culture. DE&I and chief diversity officers should have slowly been phased out, right? Everything has a purpose, and then you build it up so long that it becomes part of your culture and it's not needed. So a chief diversity officer at some point should have been slowly phased out because it becomes part of the culture, right? It's those virtues and missions and visions, and I'm standing on it, and we're doing it. because it's part of our culture, not because I'm being pushed to do it. So yes, I do think at some point it should have been phased out. Like I chose to retire, but at some point I should have been, like, okay, we don't need you anymore because we're doing such a great job. It's part of the culture, right? And that's where this language of belonging comes from, is that I belong as soon as I become part of the organization. Do you all know employee life cycle, team member life cycle, from hire to retire? Right, it's a cycle. You're hired, you're early career, mid-career, end career, retire if you stay in the organization. So from hire to retire, culturally, I should feel welcomed and be my authentic self. From the moment I'm in my interview until I retire. Yes, I know it may not exist in all companies. I know, but we're getting there. Yes, Calvin.
What is your advice to those companies that have special EERNs for Latinos, African Americans, Asians? Do they do away with those groups because of diversity?
I'm sorry, I can't hear your question because this person is so loud over here. Yeah, he is. Say it again.
Okay, for those companies that have ERN networks, they got
Employee
group
resource networks.
there. They got one for blacks, one for Latinos, another for Asians. Should they do away with those programs?
Okay.
Since they're the DIA initiative?
All right. So Calvin's question is, should companies eliminate business resource group, employee resource networks, whatever you call them in your organization? And according to the executive orders, you do not have to. You do not have to. They just have to be open and offer programs that are welcomed to all. However, that's how they've always been, right? That's why allyship, ally in quotes, I may not be self-identified as a Latin woman, but I could still be a part of that network because I wanted to be an ally or I wanted to learn and know more. So companies do not have to eliminate them according to the executive orders. But remember, one of the things I said is follow company policies to ensure compliance, because it's up to the individual company to decide whether or not they want to keep them. And there are companies, after the executive orders, that have disbanded their employee networks. Thank you for that question. Who else has a question? All right. We've got about 10 minutes left, but I want to say thank you for joining me today. I am Cathy Ivey Consulting. My email address is up there. I'm happy to stay behind and answer any other questions. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me in this session. I know you could have been in the other ones, but I am so glad that you joined me here. And I got to meet a friend that I haven't seen in years at this session, Brianna. So I feel very honored and welcome to be here, and that the Carolina chapter invited me to join you all. So thank you so, so much. And I hope you take this information back with you and make some change. Thank you. So the sponsors of PMI Carolina is Wake Forest. You're going to do that. Okay. Nope, go ahead. Nope, it's all on you.
Okay, so we want to thank our sponsors. I'm not going to read them out, but Wake Forest and the University of North Charlotte, they're out there. Also people selling bags. I saw you looking at the bags. So there's vendors selling things out there too, as well as our sponsors have tables. Please visit them and say hello. I'm going to bring up, one thing Pauline did ask is, has everybody written their name on the piece of paper? I don't know whether the QR code's going to work. I'm going to bring it up. and try and scan it, but if it doesn't work, hang on, Cathy, I'll just click the next one. Oops. Yeah, here we go. So try the QR code, everybody, but if it doesn't work, please make sure your name is on the list. Pauline asked to have it on the list, so check the code, please. If it's not working, make sure your name is on the list. Cathy, thank you. Thank you. It was a very insightful and interesting presentation about how the world has changed, in the latest regime. Maybe things will change in the future.
That's an interesting thought. What we have to consider moving forward is it shouldn't matter whether or not an administration policies are in place. That's why it's always do what's right. Do what's right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the administration is in, what administration is in place. If you do what's right, it'll always be right. My grandmother went to the 3rd grade, but she was the wisest woman I've known my whole life. She was from Pittsview, Alabama. Can't get no more southern than that, right? But you know what she said to me? Cathy Ann, because that's why I use my full government name, Cathy Ann, you'll never get right out of doing wrong. You'll never get right out of doing wrong. So if you always do the right thing, it'll always be right. Thank you.